Hey guys, Corey here. Welcome to Blue Talks, and I hope you enjoy this video.
Good morning, everyone. This is the Abundance Exchange, a Blue Talk at Columbia University by Omar L. Harris. Beans and wieners, that quintessential American dish. 4 cans of baked beans, a package of hot dog chopped up into coins, mustard, little barbecue sauce, 1 pot. $5 feeding a family of 4. Now, when beans and wieners hit the table at the Harris household when I was a child, it stayed for a week. As a kid, I didn't really know what that meant, but as an adult, I did the math. And what I realized was that the beans and wieners weeks were the weeks that my parents were stretching the budget. Now, the meal itself didn't signal lack, but the silence at the table did. The furtive glances between my parents did. Scarcity became a thread running through my childhood. But here's what I missed. Even while my parents worked really, really hard to make ends meet, they never made themselves the center of the story. What they handed across that table week after week was a full meal and a silent promise that everything was going to be okay. I now know what I was witnessing. 2 people giving an abundance exchange from a place where there was almost nothing left to give. You see, scarcity sends a quiet message. You don't have enough. You aren't enough. And once you take that in, it becomes the frame of reference to which you perceive the world. There will never be enough. Not enough money, not enough recognition, not enough opportunity. Scarcity literally rewrites our biology. This is what scientists call epigenetics. There's a study called the Dutch hunger winter study from 1944, where they followed the children of pregnant mothers, or mothers who were pregnant during a famine, and they followed them and their grandchildren through generations. And what they found was startling. Decades after the actual famine, these children and their grandchildren showed higher markers of scarcity, slower metabolism, higher rates of obesity and diabetes. It proved that scarcity is not just something that we live through, it also lives through us. Scarcity literally rewrites the instructions of our cells that our cells follow without asking, long after the lack is gone. And by the time a high-performing adult walks into an organization or boardroom, the outside circumstances of their life may have completely changed, but the inside wiring hasn't. Let's consider the shape of the problem. The triangle is the most stable shape in engineering, right? You push on a square, it shifts. You push on a triangle, it holds. But the exactly same thing that makes the triangle so useful in steel construction, the fact that it won't bend, is exactly what makes it harmful when we lay the triangle over our human systems. Picture any organization. It's wide at the bottom, narrow at the top, right? Most people carry the load down below. The higher you climb, the thinner the air, and at the top, a small group of people holding most of the power. Yes? Now, this shape, this triangle, doesn't create scarcity, but it makes scarcity feel real. Researchers have found something very interesting. When people see status as limited, even when there's plenty to go around, our attention narrows and we get more competitive, every move starts to feel like a zero sum. That means if someone else advances, it feels like something just left my column, right? We have a name for this. It's called imposter syndrome. What happens when someone walks their scarcity mindset into a room full of hierarchy? They're going to figure out, I'm not supposed to be here. Everyone in this room is smarter than me. I got lucky. It won't happen twice, right? These are the inner thoughts. Imposter syndrome doesn't just hit the unqualified, actually hits the most qualified, the people who are doing most of the work, the very people that the triangle was supposed to reward. The high performer over-prepares, over-delivers, brushes off compliments, and takes every criticism as proof of this scarcity. The triangle made scarcity feel real, and the imposter voice makes scarcity feel personal. But imposter syndrome doesn't actually come from scarcity. It comes from the ego. The ego was never supposed to be the villain. 1,000,000 years ago, its job was to keep us alive, scanning the savannah for predators, keeping us close to the fire. Then the predators left, the savannah turned into the conference room, the tribe turned into an org chart. And the ego, still scanning, still on high alert, found new work. It stopped protecting us from lions. It started protecting us from embarrassment. Now, the ego doesn't ask, am I safe anymore? It asks, am I enough? And in a triangle-shaped world, the answer is almost always, not yet. Over time, the ego shrinks us down into whatever version is most likely to win approval. And that shrunken version starts to feel like who we really are. And because it feels like who we really are, we defend it. That version of ourselves. The cost of this self-narrowing is a little bit of extra explaining when none was needed. A little more pushback on feedback you know is fair. A small flinch inside when someone else shines. This isn't a moral failure, it's a pattern. And the cost is that our world gets smaller. When we start running life like a scoreboard, wins and losses, ahead and behind, who's rising, who has a seat at the table, who doesn't. What we're really keeping score of is scarcity. Not just of money, but scarcity of attention, of belonging, and of control. Living on a scoreboard is exhausting because the scoreboard never closes. So now take the triangle we've been building inside ourselves since childhood and lay it over the one we work inside every day. Imagine a double triangle, one smaller and one outside. They match almost perfectly, these two triangles. The structure outside confirms the wiring inside. The wiring inside accepts the structure outside as just the way things are. The ego looks at the triangle and says, I was right to stay on alert. The triangle looks at the ego and says, good, stay in your lane. And between the two of them, guess what? We stay small. Small in meetings, small in our ambitions, small in what we'll ask for, try, or even imagine. So the real question is this: how do we expand again from this narrowed place? The first way out is a word so worn out from overuse we barely even hear it anymore. Character. Personality is what you inherited. Genetics is what you were before what you were handed. Epigenetics is what got written into you before you could say no. Character is different. Character is what you choose anyway. It's the ability to feel the squeeze of those two triangles, the one narrowing above you, the one whispering you don't belong from within you, and to rise anyway. Not because the pressure has lifted, but because you've decided the pressure doesn't get the last word. That's character, and it's the first step out of scarcity. The choice to not be compressed. So leading teams in the US, the Middle East, Asia, and Latin America, over 22 years, I started to notice that character shows up in 4 ways. 4 pillars that the people I respected most shared, no matter the culture. Almost all of them shared these same 4 pillars. And I call it W.H.O.M. W-H-O-M. Work ethic, heart, optimism, and maturity. The 4 pillars of character. Work ethic is choosing to do the unglamorous work day after day, long after motivation has worn off. Heart is the choice to care out loud, not sentimental, but convicted. Optimism is choosing to believe a better outcome is possible and worth working toward, not naive, but a grounded belief that the future isn't set. And maturity is the choice to sit with complexity without snapping into a reaction. I can hold complexity, but I don't have to react. That's maturity. And here's the honest part. Based on your personality, 1 or 2 of these 4 pillars will come naturally to you, but that would be a personality assessment. Whom is about choosing to elevate across all 4 pillars, whether they come naturally to you or not, because all 4 are important to move us out of scarcity. You see, character isn't a trait. Character is a practice. When one person in a system operates from real whom, work ethic, heart, optimism, and maturity, when their character isn't a strategy, but just who they are, it doesn't stay put. It spreads. It gives other people permission. It shifts what people around them think is possible for themselves. Think about the most important person in your professional life. The one who changed how you lead, how you see yourself. I'd bet they weren't the most skilled person in the room, but they were the one whose character made the room feel bigger, feel safer, feel like everything was more possible. High character in one becomes high character in all. But character on its own is just a private win. If all that capacity stays pointed at yourself, all you've done is build a better fortress, right? The abundance exchange starts the moment character turns outward, when you use what you've built as something you give, not something you guard. Okay? And this is where the math of scarcity breaks. Inside that triangle, every interaction is a transaction. I give, I lose, you rise, I fall. In the abundance exchange, the math flips. When I hold a standard you can rise to, I don't lose work ethic, I deepen it. When I make it safe for you to bring your best to your heart, my heart doesn't run out, I create more. When I stay steady while you find your footing, my maturity becomes the floor we both stand on. Character given away doesn't subtract, it multiplies. And the moment 2 people in a system start operating this way, the triangle stops being the only shape in the room and a field opens up around everyone. So, what do I mean by abundance? Abundance is not a quantity of stuff, contrary to popular belief and what we deem to be wealth in today's society. Abundance is a stance you take towards reality. Abundance is the recognition that the most valuable resources in any room, trust, attention, courage, creativity, and belonging, aren't finite. They grow the more we freely trade them. It works because how we see actually creates what we see. How we see actually creates what we see. The lens we look at doesn't just describe our reality, it shapes what we notice, what we chase, and what becomes possible. A scarcity lens narrows everything down until every interaction looks like a competition, right? But an abundance lens opens everything back up until the same interaction looks like a chance to build something together. Same room, same people, different reality, because somebody brought a different lens to it. So my own journey into the abundance exchange started at the lowest point of my career. 2015, I was in Indonesia as general manager of a global pharmaceutical company with 900 employees. Now, at this point in my career, I thought I was a positive psychology expert. I thought I knew servant leadership inside and out, but both really got challenged by this experience. The leaders I'd hired were pushing back against the people-first culture I was looking to implement into the business. Their argument was people first wasn't focused enough on commercial realities. And the harder I pushed to kind of flip the culture, the more I hit a wall. Eventually, I had to admit something really uncomfortable for me. I had made myself the center of the story. I was quietly judging every outcome by what it meant for me, my values, my beliefs, my way of doing things. I was trying to offer an abundance exchange from a place that still needed to win. So I made a deliberate shift. Less time proving, more time listening. Less focus on my own lane, more attention to what other people were carrying. Less need to be right, more curiosity about what might open things up. And the moment I stopped making it about me, guess what? The friction eased. The same leaders who had been pushing back started stepping up. The culture I'd been trying to force into place started taking shape on its own because I'd literally gotten out of the way. That was when I got it. The abundance exchange isn't something you roll out. It's something you become. And the system reorganizes around who you've become. You know the abundance exchange is happening because the temperature in the room literally changes. Not metaphorically, but literally. In people's bodies, they sit differently. They lean in. They stop holding their breath between sentences. You catch it in small signals. Someone shares a half-formed idea instead of waiting until it's airtight. Somebody admits they don't know, and the room doesn't punish them for it. The room stops being a hierarchy and starts being a field. And here's the part that surprises people. It doesn't take everyone in the room. It just takes one person whose work ethic, heart, optimism, and maturity aren't being guarded anymore, and the field forms around them. And in that opening, the room does what scarcity never let it do. It thinks together, it takes risks together, it tells the truth together. Shields down all at once. That's the power of the abundance exchange. So, the abundance exchange is trading the ego's tight grip for a bigger sense of who we are, rooted in what we contribute, not in how we compare. And when enough of us can operate this way, the shape of the room changes, the triangle doesn't fall apart, hierarchy still exists, but it stops being the only thing the room organizes around. The field forms underneath it. And in that field, people do their best work. Not because they've been incentivized to, but because they've been freed to. They've been freed to. This isn't softer leadership, it's stronger results. Coming from a bigger version of yourself and ourselves. Teams that outperform their org charts. Cultures that outlast their founders. So here's your invitation. You don't need a title. You don't need permission from the top. You need one decision, made and made again, every day, to give what you built instead of guarding it. Work ethic, heart, optimism, and maturity. Given, not guarded. And it starts with one of us, just one of us, deciding to be the one person in the room whose shields are already down. Because we won't be ruled by fear anymore or made small by the pressure. We'll show up because doing anything else just isn't in our character. Thank you very much.